Hello, thanks for joining us today. I'm joined today by Tom Haak, who is the director of the HR Trend Institute based in the Netherlands. Tom has extensive experience in HR leadership for multinational companies and founded the Institute in 2014 to help companies and leaders to understand and respond to the impact of trends on their organization. Tom, thank you for joining us today. Can you please tell us about yourself and about the work that you do?
Well, thank you, Karen. Thank you for having me. And so my name is Tom Haak. I'm Dutch. I'm work out of the Netherlands. I'm a psychologist by training, so an experimental psychologist, and I worked for many years in different HR positions. In 2014, I founded the HR Trend Institute, so that's already 7 years ago. And there we are trend watchers in the domain of people and organization. You could say the future of work. And well, the main objective is to inspire people, HR professionals, other people, about the future and how they could use trends to make life in and around organizations, more fun and maybe more effective as well.
That's brilliant. And what is the factors or the criteria that determine a HR trend?
Yeah, and that's a good question. But so I'm not in the end, I'm not a scientist. So the criteria are partly in my head. So and one of the most important criteria is, do I think it's an interesting trend to follow and to track? Yes. So there are areas that might be trends, but where I say, well, it's a little bit outside my domain of interest, so I leave it. So that's one. I'm also not so interested, and that's another criteria, in middle of the road. Yeah. So benchmarking, what are all the others doing? There are organizations that can do that a lot better than I can do that. So I'm always looking for signs, early signs of things that maybe are not happening a lot, but that I see moving. So I'm trying to do some kind of early detection. And then, of course, a criteria is that something that people in organizations could use to change the organization, to drive transformation or whatsoever. So it's not a formal list of criteria. And to be honest, some of the trends I write about and speak about are sometimes more wishful thinking than that they are actually really. So I'm trying to influence the future a little bit as well.
Brilliant. And so in terms of your customers, they're obviously purchasing your understanding of the trends and your choice of trends based on your experience and your expertise. So who are these customers, and how can these HR trends that you select help them to continuously improve?
Well, my business is very limited in a way. I have two kinds of customers. One group of customers is people who organize conferences. So they are looking for someone who can talk about trends at their conference. And so they are happy if I perform well, if I entertain the audience, and if they learn something new as well. So that's one group of clients. The second group of clients is organizations, generally larger organizations, because they have HR teams and they have the money to pay consultants like myself. And they hire me for inspiration. So they go on an offsite to talk about their strategy. They want some outside view, and then they come to me to challenge them a little bit and to show them what could be possible. So that's inspiration, and then hopefully they do something with that. So that's very limited, because I don't do consulting. I don't help organizations to implement the trends or use the trends or whatsoever. Yeah, I could do that, but I find that a little bit too time consuming and maybe too boring as well. So it's a very limited business and I like it. So that's a good thing.
Nice. So what you're doing then is essentially you're attending meetings and providing that, and you're also obviously speaking at events, and you write blogs as well, don't you?
Yeah, so I do a lot of things where not primarily for clients, but for the wider group of, you could say, the people who are interested in what I write and speak about. And that's the blogs. I write blogs on my website, hrtrendinstitute.com. I write blogs elsewhere as well. I shifted more to video lately. So on my YouTube channel, you can find various videos. I make bi-weekly videos with Natal Denk, who is a friend of mine, and together we make videos under the banner of Talking HR Trends with Natal and Tom. We do that, and that's not, there's no business model behind it. We do that because we like it, and we make those type of videos. So there's a lot of content out there that is freely available. It's not hidden behind a paywall or whatsoever.
Oh, that's really good. And I guess from that perspective, you're really helping, smaller consultants and smaller people in HR to access those trends. And like you say, what you were doing before, you're sparking imagination and providing that inspiration for action and strategy. And how would you say that influences and can support employees and job seekers as well? So from the other side of the HR.
Yeah, so there's different groups that benefit. As you already mentioned, it's on the one side, it's HR professionals and other people. It's also, which I did not mention, startups and scale-ups. So people who want entrepreneurs in HR tech and other areas. They come to me sometimes as well to say, hey, how do we enter this difficult world? And what's your view? And of course, you could say, employees or candidates or people in general can benefit a lot from looking at the trends and benefiting the trends. I can give a couple of examples maybe. Take candidates, or you're looking for a job. Then it helps to know how are companies, organizations sourcing. What are they looking at these days? And there are all kinds of trends in the recruitment domain that you could use for your benefit. For example, one of the longer term trends is moving away from clearly defined jobs, more looking at the skills of people and saying, well, we want to have people with certain type of skills that are, in a sense, future proof. So that's a long-term trend. If you're aware of this trend, you can make sure that the way you profile yourself, but also the way you train yourself, fits with that trend. So make sure that you have the skills or are proficient in the skills that employers view as future-proof. And then you can make sure that you are in your LinkedIn profile, or many people will use LinkedIn, that you have the right keyword in that search. It's also that if you know that today most organizations are sourcing with the help of machines, the machine is looking at the profiles and saying, hey, look for me, look for candidates that have these kind of keywords in their profile. Well, then you better make sure that you have those kind of keywords in your profile. So those are just two simple examples, but there are many more examples where you can benefit from being aware of the trends in your education, in the way you're looking for jobs, and in the way you continue to train yourself.
Definitely. And that's so important for trainers and teachers to know as well, so that they are preparing the next generation to communicate themselves in that way, which is really important. So
and that's all, that there's always difficulty there, that sometimes it's not about education, but the danger is that they are lagging behind and that they are training for today and not
tomorrow.
not enough for the future. That's also that I talked earlier about benchmarking, but that's I don't like that too much, because then are people looking at what is happening today and what are successful organizations doing today. But well, that's not. Yeah, look at yourself and also look a little bit more at the future instead of copying what other people are doing. Copying is never a good idea because, well, organizations are different, situations are different. So yeah, you better look at your own issues and try to do something there.
Yeah, definitely. So what would you say then are your biggest challenges in the work that you do in, you know, finding those great trends and selecting the ones that you feel that are relevant and then sharing those? What's the biggest challenges involved in that?
Well, I say, to be honest, I don't have super big challenges, but in the end, the biggest challenge is to stay original and relevant. Because if people say, well, yeah, and we've heard that story of Tom now a couple of times, and well, you know, there's nothing new. So that is a challenge, because the reality is that many of the trends are long-term trends that are there for years and years and years. So the trends itself are long-term trends, mega trends that have been there for years and years and are not changing so much, and unfortunately are not adapted very quickly. And many organizations in a way are often resisting the trends. I'll give you one example that's around the changing shapes of organization. That's a long-term trend. From, you could say, the traditional hierarchical, clear organization that we picture as a pyramid, to all kind of new shapes, network type of organizations, or you could say ecosystems where you function in ecosystems. If you look at HR practices today and the way organizations function, they are still often doing as if they are still in the old situation. We have a clear organization with an org chart, and we are doing things for people on the payroll. Well, that is not the reality of today. If you look at the people who are connected to organizations and are relevant for organizations, that's a wide group of people. That's not only the people on the payroll. That's the flexible workforce, that's candidates, but that's also alumni, people who have worked for you. That's suppliers, that's clients, of course, are super, super important. And you could even look wider, and that's very relevant today. That's what are we doing for society, and how relevant are we for society? Well, so that's wide, long-term trend, but it's often neglected. So one challenge is, coming back to your question, to stay relevant and innovative and impactful. The other is, and that's a continuous challenge, how to get the message across, how to inspire people without being too paternalistic or too it's very easy to become a kind of preacher. You should do this and you should do this. So that's another challenge. How not to become a preacher, inspire people, in an impactful way.
That's really good advice. I think that's good advice as well as teachers and trainers, when we share information, to actually do it in a way that, like you say, it inspires. It's not preaching. And that's I like that. That's really important.
HR often does that. In many organizations, HR is too much paternalistic and too much preaching. You hear that a lot. Our managers don't do it, or the people don't understand that they have to learn. So often the message, we know best. Yeah, but the stupid managers, the stupid people, they don't know, and that's not very effective.
No. Definitely not. And you actually wrote talking about engaging, you wrote an engaging post about future job titles. Can you tell us a little bit about why that's really important and what do job titles actually tell us, especially these changing job titles?
Yeah, and I don't think it's very important. So that's and job titles is something you in a way of the past. Eh? Job titles, it has to do with people in clear boxes, people in the org charts, people getting status out of their job title. So in that way, I look at it from more as something historical and then that is important today. Secondly, it gives me sometimes a good laugh because there are many strange job titles, but it also is a little bit an indication of the trends because you see new job titles emerging and other ones going. For example, we can clearly see the whole upcoming of people analytics. 10 years ago, there were no job titles related to people analytics. These days, it's more and more. Experience. 10 years ago, nobody. Today, it's all about chief experience officers and those, or the chief happiness officer. So those are clearly areas where things are happening. So that's an indication. But my message, my clear, don't get hung up on the job titles. It's not about you also hear the discussion around HR should be in the board or should be in the management team, but you don't increase your impact by increasing your status or your position. You should increase your status by delivering and helping to solve important problems. And then maybe you get an important, you get a nice job title and a nice position, but that should maybe be more a result than the starting point.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I guess what we're essentially trying to do is prepare our future generations for a future which is relatively uncertain. And that's obviously why, studying trends and trying to predict is important. And what would you say are the important, would you say are the three most important skills that you believe that young people in high schools should be trying to build now for the future?
Yeah. And up front, I think one of the most important things is, outside the skills, that you make sure you have options. Because that's very important. If the future is insecure and we don't know what's coming, then you better have options. So you can do this and this and this. And you see that people who have created options for themselves have more opportunities. And that could be, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't say, I want HR is, maybe learn some languages, learn to drive, learn to cook. I just give some examples, but those things start your own business on the side. If you have options, generally you are more resilient or more anti-fragile, as I like to call it, following Nicolas Taleb. So that's upfront. Then there are clearly skills that are more, some skills are more future-proof than others, and some are important even today. And I'll mention a few. Of course, it has to do with methodology and analytics. That's important. Work evidence-based. And don't shy away from statistics and methodology. In the past, you saw many people doing that. Those things are very, very important. So make sure you are skilled in those areas. And that also has to do with the second area, that's understanding technology. Technology is a main driver for change, has been. You have to have some affinity with a technology. You have to understand a little bit technology. You have to understand the essentials of programming, those type of things. So analytics, methodology, technology. Third on my list would be the ability to work in agile ways. So understand and master agile methodologies in combination with design thinking. And I think that should be a very important element of what people learn today, because that way you are able to function better in organizations. So that's already three, but the fourth one I would say, but that's underlying and important in all those elements. But let's call it the art of conversation. You have to be able to talk with people, to listen to people, to really empathize and understand people, because that should be the fundament of all the things you are doing. And that's also something you can learn, and that's clearly a future-proof skill, because that's an element where machines cannot so easily replicate us. Yes, and there are more areas. I encourage people to look at it. But what you can see that some of those areas have been undervalued at, especially you could say, HR educational areas these days.
Definitely. Well, we're almost at the end of our interview now.
Okay.
And I would just like to ask you, obviously for young people and trainers that watch this interview, what would you say, where can they come and find your information, your blogs, and just follow what you do and just get a better idea of what is actually happening in the future and interesting trends?
Yeah, so the best starting point is two places. As I mentioned, go to YouTube, search for YouTube Tom Haak, and then you will find videos, short videos, sometimes a little bit longer videos. The advantage is that videos you can speed up, so you can watch them at twice the speed, so then you can do it faster. Go to hrtrendinstitute.com. There are many blogs there, and you can always link to me on LinkedIn. Tom Haak, LinkedIn, and then via LinkedIn, I share a lot of information also from other people, of course, via LinkedIn. So that's also a good way. If you follow a couple of people like me, there are some very excellent other people I mentioned. For example, David Green, who is a master curator in the HR area. Josh Burson is a clear example as well. So there are many, but good, let's call them curators, but also content providers. If you follow them, they make sure you get relevant information.
Brilliant. That's so good. And I'd just like to thank you so much for spending your time with us today and sharing all of those insights, which, you know, they are really important, and especially those skills for the future, and also the importance of knowing what is in the future and not just planning for what's happening today. So all those lessons have been really valuable. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me.